So today I am going to be talking with Denise Allen, who wrote the book Pennsylvania Vital Records Research. And she published it late last year. Is that correct?
I squeaked it in December of 2022.
Yeah, that's what I thought. It was the
My
very
goal was to
tail
publish it
end.
by the end of the year, and I just barely made it, but
Yeah, I
I
I
made my
thought
goal.
that's what it was, but I wasn't sure. And it's like I think it goes right there. Um, but anyway, she published it last year and has been promoting it all of 2023 that we've had so far. And I just wanted to bring her on and share with you viewers about the book and kind of like a little bit of a behind the scenes look as well. And will be really great for those of you who are researching Pennsylvania ancestors, but it's also a good listen to if you have a desire to write and publish a book like me. I actually, because she did what she said she was going to do, I actually have started writing my book again. So thank you for that. Or B,
Yay!
thank you. B, if you have ancestors anywhere in the US, this will give you ideas as to what you should be looking for, like in the laws and things like that, to figure out if records were created and then where you might find them today. So let's go ahead and get started. Denise, you want to say hello?
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Julie, for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's always good to catch up with you. And you were on my podcast in 2022 in the beginning of the year, and I had all these genealogy goals, and I did not succeed in doing most of them, but I did finish this book. So I started this book when COVID first shut everything down. I thought I want to start figuring out how Pennsylvania records work. I am unusual in that both sides of my family, my maternal and paternal side, have many generations in Pennsylvania. They seem to have landed here and just most of them never really left. So I am across 8 counties in Pennsylvania, digging through records just to do my own family. And I kept getting stuck, as a lot of us do when we're researching. And I was like, okay, the way I can figure this out is to write it down. And if I write it down and I get this straight, I want to share it with everyone. Like, why just keep it to myself, right? And I've also discovered that a lot of genealogy resources that I think we've used in the past as genealogists, that was published in books is no longer available, right? So like they stopped publishing books about genealogy, I think under the thinking that it's all on the internet, which, as we know, it's not all on the internet because websites disappear or they get edited or whatever, things happen.
Right.
And we didn't necessarily save the web pages. So that was sort of what was going through my brain, with this book. And that's why I had to like just publish it in 2022. Because if I didn't do it, I was like, I'm never just, and I have to get this done. Like, it's just like, this is ridiculous. So, and I have plans for others, but we can talk about that at the end. So,
Okay, cool. You kind of touched on it a little bit, but what inspired you to write this particular book?
well, I think when we are researching our ancestors, the basic brackets we're always looking for is birth, marriage, and death, right? So if we can figure out when they were born and when they died, and we can fill in those fields in Ancestry or Family Search or our software that we're using, and we know who they're married to and how many times they were married, that's huge, right, for us as in constructing family trees. So it made sense then to cover vital records, but I wanted to expand this one and also cover what we have about adoption in Pennsylvania, as well as divorce, because those are two other things that affect people's names and finding them in records. So,
Yeah, and I will tell you that I don't consider divorce records as vital records because they're
Mm.
technically court records. However, that is probably my favorite chapter of the whole book because I feel like I could actually go and find those records if I needed to, because you talk about the early records and how to find the details with those, which is important, and a lot of people don't know how to do that. So I feel like I could find those like really quick, really easy, and I'm all about quick and easy genealogy. So thank you for that. But it gave me ideas too about I need to go and study the laws in a couple of the states that I work in, where I do have divorce, and it's on my list because I have one in particular that's I'm not sure if he ever got divorced. So I'm not sure if his subsequent marriage, which would have been his third, was actually legit or not. So I'm still working through that, and I need to study the laws in a couple states because he could have gone to like Indiana and filed, or Iowa because he went out to the west side of Illinois, and he could have gone to Iowa. So I need to look at like those three states and see what he may or may not have done to see if I can track it, because he did not file for a divorce in Chicago. And I know he probably would have been the one to file because he left. I mean, I personally think he just walked out the door and never looked back. But that's all beside the point. But anyways, so it got me thinking and gave me some ideas. It's already on my list, but it gave me ideas for other things I should be looking for. Um, and considering the time period and all that kind of stuff. So I do appreciate that. I did appreciate that chapter. First, I couldn't figure out why it was there. I'm like, well, it's kind of related. I get it, sort of. But I was like, oh, this is good. This is good stuff. I like this.
Yeah,
Oh,
people don't talk about divorce records, and you're never going to find a divorce
yeah,
record online unless somebody uploaded it.
yeah,
Because you're correct, it's court documents. And when Family Search or the Utah Genealogical Association microfilmed records, they didn't microfilm a lot of court records. I mean, they might have done the naturalization, something around that in different counties, but yeah, divorces are messy. They to get divorced for most of the history of the United States was something that was unusual, and you needed a good reason. There wasn't no fault divorce. There was a plaintiff and a defendant, and each had to make their case. And yeah, it's a process. And
yeah,
yeah, I've read through some of those, and they're rough.
yeah.
They're rough,
I've got a
and
couple of those.
sometimes they're not. People they're a little more amicable as you get closer to the 1980s and the 1970s, where people just dissolve a marriage. It's more what's the word, they agree on to disagree, I guess.
Yeah, they're
But
more
yeah,
straightforward.
it's more straightforward. And
Yeah,
I know it's hard for you and I to probably imagine, but for younger people, I mean, 50 years ago is a long time. Where they might be looking up divorces of their grandparents, maybe from the 1970s. So and they can do that, and those are public records in Pennsylvania,
mhm,
so you can look up anybody's divorce at any point. They're not sealed. I mean, maybe, I guess there always could be some unusual circumstance, but just
yeah.
marriage records and divorce records in Pennsylvania are always public from the minute that they're created. So people
Which I
often
found
say,
interesting about the marriage records. So that was
yeah,
interesting.
you could walk into your county courthouse in Pennsylvania and get a list of everyone who was married, or
Yesterday.
everyone who applied for a marriage license. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Which is crazy. Yeah, I
yeah.
had no idea that you could like literally just go and be like,
I think it's that way
can
in
you tell
most
me
of
who
the
was
United
married or
States.
who applied for a marriage license yesterday? I went just a
Yeah.
whole list. Thank you very much. And okay, interesting.
Yeah, I think it's that way in most states, actually. I don't think there's, because that's how, there's probably a reason for it somehow, because like financial companies all know who we're married to. They know
That's
who to go
true.
after, like it's, yeah. Anyway, back to genealogy. What's your next question?
Um, okay, so I kind of alluded to this a little earlier, but from your perspective, who is your ideal reader? Like, who is this book written for?
Well, it's written for someone who's new to Pennsylvania genealogy research and wants to get started and make sure that they're being thorough, right? So I think it's very easy to go online and follow the shaky green leaf hints, and chat with people in Facebook groups, and kind of make your way forward through the research. But if you get stuck, or you just want to make sure that you got everything on your people, this is the book for you. So it's very reasonably priced. You can get the paperback copy from Amazon, but you can also get the ebook for a lesser amount. And the ebook, or the iBook, or whatever it is, the online Kindle version, you can get that on Amazon. You can go to Barnes and Noble. You could go to Apple iBooks, and get it from any of those places. And my plan is to upload this in such a way that libraries could order a copy eventually. So that's a different process. And as soon as
Right.
I understand that a little bit better, I will get it done, because this is a great book for a library to have within the state of Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or
Definitely.
like the Allen County Library, Center, or Salt Lake or something.
That's a good point. And maybe like after we're done with this, we could chat about that because I actually have some information.
Oh, good. I will always take more information. Thank
Yeah,
you.
right. But we won't bore my poor viewers with that information right now.
Diving down that rabbit hole.
Okay, so you've kind of talked about this just a teeny bit, but what just tell me a little bit more about the book. Like what kind of topics are covered and what information can we expect to find in the book? So we talked about divorce records and vital records in general, but there's um, a couple other topics that you cover and that kind of thing. What should they expect to find with the vital record discussion? So
Okay,
hope that made
so
sense.
yes. So the book covers vital records from 1682, when Pennsylvania started. Well, 1681, technically, when William Penn stepped off the boat. But I said 1682 because that's when the records start, until today. So no matter when you're researching within Pennsylvania, this book will help you. I wrote the book from a perspective as if, and I don't want this to sound heretical, or like whatever, as if ancestry and family search did not exist. So if those went away tomorrow, this book would still work, okay? Because I talk about the record, the history of the record, when it was created, why it was created, where it's stored today, because everything online has an actual document with it that lives and exists. So the quote unquote real version isn't on Ancestry or Family Search. There's an actual paper version of that document in a Pennsylvania courthouse, usually, for these documents. Some are at the state archives. So, but the book also has a checklist, so you can walk through the checklist of where those documents live and follow a search process. So if I wanted to figure out if there's a death record for my ancestor who died in, let's say, 1895, where would I go? And I can read the chapter on that would be a death registration, those years, and read through, and I'll learn in counties, those were kept, at the Register of Wills, okay, here's where those documents live today, da 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 da. And so if I can't find it online for whatever reason, I can contact the county and get some more information. I also cover some fun things like delayed birth certificates, which were created by the states to help people be able to file for a social security number. So these are always listed on a database beginning in 1941 up to 1976 in Pennsylvania. And people think, oh, I can get birth certificates for people that were born from 1941 to 1976. It's like, no, that's the years they filed for these certificates. And they could have been born from 1870 something, or my one ancestor was born in 1876. and he filed for one in 1950, right? So it's like, so he's got one filed in 1950 for his birth in 1876, and somehow the man found someone who said that he knew him his whole life. So good for him. And these, are for us as genealogists, again, evidence of parents, other relationships, because they're getting these affidavits from neighbors and family to verify their existence, and able to do that. The book also includes, which is unusual, and I think it's the first book to do this for Pennsylvania research, a list of the major laws related to vital records. So you can walk through the laws and know that, this record should exist on this date forward, right? So this is what people were supposed to do. So you're not working with innuendo or hearsay or whatever. This is the actual law that people were supposed to follow. And I think if people read through those, they'll be shocked at the amount of the amount of fines that were enacted if people didn't follow the law, particularly for marriage licenses. The equivalent would be about $3,000 today if people didn't file for a marriage license when those were required. So, if you can't find a marriage license for an ancestor and these started in 1885, you're not looking in the right place. Because it's unlikely your ancestor was going to risk a $3,000 fine, or the minister too, for not complying with that law. So they could have been married in Maryland or Delaware or New Jersey or New York or, any other state, but they got married. They probably have a marriage license. So you just need to keep looking. They might not have been married in Pennsylvania, and those marriage licenses, and people hate this, I'm so sorry, but they're at the counties and we don't have a centralized database. So I'm so sorry. That's just Pennsylvania research. You got to just work your way through the counties. Where could they have gotten married, and go through that way. And which is another reason why I wrote the book. I'm sorry. We're just a bear of a state. We don't have a lot of complete centralized records to search. It's the newer states in the union do. We don't. We just don't.
So, I'm curious to know, what was the hardest part of the book to write? Like, what was it? What was it? These laws, like putting these laws together and citing them, because you did do that, or was there another part of the book that was just kind of like a bear to write? I think I like to
The
use
bear,
word.
tackling the bear. I think the whole thing, I have such a lack of confidence and an inferiority complex about writing. I honestly, this book was written 5 times. I rewrote this book from beginning to end 5 times. I just kept rewriting it. And I had people who are subscribed on my newsletter list. And if you want to be on my newsletter list and get my random ramblings about my book, my next book, which I will also struggle to write equally as much, you can go to my website, paancestors.com, and click sign up. There's a button on there somewhere.
Yeah, and I'll put a link in the
And you'll get my
description.
random ramblings. Yeah, I'm writing about courthouse records research first, but I think so. One of the hardest parts is I have in my head the way I think these records work, right? And the way that they're structured from everything that I've heard and what I've done in the past. And I think, Julie, you can relate to this. At some point, you've got to relook at what you've done and really question it. It's like, okay, I thought that when I first got started. Now is that really how it works? Is that really the way? And it's like, I have to go back to square one and look at it like I'm 5 years old. Explain it to me like I'm 5, right?
Uh-huh.
All right, I want to get married. Here's who I'm gonna marry. How do I do this? Right? We're gonna go where? Okay, we're gonna go to the courthouse. All right. Then what do we do? Okay, we're gonna walk to this office and we're gonna fill out this piece of paper. And I know that sounds silly, but it's like, okay, I had a baby. What happened next? How do I because I know the way it's supposed to be done now, but I have to take myself back in time. What happened in 1760? What happened in 1880? And it varied. And and so, yeah, that was the hardest part. And I'm doing the same thing now with looking at deeds and looking at wills. And I'm like, all right, for years I've researched these things and I'm like, I think that they work like this. And I think I was wrong. I forgot to look at this. I forgot to look at that. And so for me, that's the hardest part is I have to swallow my ego. And I'm also battling my insecurity of like, of like being able to communicate what's actually going on. And then I'm sending what I'm writing to people and like, can you read this? Does this sound does this sound too dumb or is it too like, am I talking too like in too many details like people don't care about? And it's genealogy. So there's always somebody who cares about the details. So it's always like that, and I'm trying to talk
Yeah.
to like the general rule, not just the weird exceptions. Cause I think genealogists too are excellent at finding the like really odd exceptions in these laws too. So yeah, I don't know.
Well, in terms of writing for, I mean, I don't know that you wrote for a 5-year-old per se,
Well, look me
but
if I'm five. But
no, but in my opinion, the easier the read, the quicker I can get through it, and the easier it is for me to learn something and apply it right then and there, as
yeah,
opposed to having to reread the sentence 12 times because I don't understand what it's trying to say because it's more of a scholarly written book. And
yeah,
I'm not looking for that when I'm looking for a how-to book. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for something
yeah,
that's going to tell me straight what it is, what I need to do, where to find it, how to find it, whatever. And it needs to be boom, boom, boom. I can't, and part of my problem is as an editor, I am a slow reader. So the faster you can get me through it, the better.
yeah. That's good. Yeah, and I
So
did have
I
an editor for this book, and she, that poor woman, it was like a bloodbath in there. She took the red like ink font and just marked her way through when I sent her a copy, and then I rewrote it again. It's like, but the thing, and I think an editor, and I think this, the thing that they can really excel at is trying to make it consistent, right? So
yeah,
changes in tense and who you're talking to and taking out the adverbs that aren't necessary and the contractions that are adding too much, like why state it as a negative when you can state it as a positive, that kind of
right.
thing. So,
Contractions aren't a bad thing. If you're trying to write informally and
yeah,
conversationally, contractions are the way to go. It actually makes it
yeah,
feel, and it makes for a faster read too, because
yeah.
there's one less word I have to actually read.
Oh, and I did want to say too, for people, if they've done DNA testing, Ancestry has, over the years, it's fascinating, in their genetic communities moved from about a dozen in Pennsylvania to over 80. So if you've tested your DNA through Ancestry, they're going to give you your Pennsylvania ancestors if you have them. And they're going to give you these very specific genetic communities. So this is a great way when you're researching to confirm your paper research, because these genetic communities were very isolated from each other. They don't look isolated on a map. And you look on a map of Pennsylvania, they'll show you this blob for your genetic community and you'll think, like how isolated could that be? But if you overlay that with a topographical map that shows the hills and the valleys of Pennsylvania, it'll make sense. And you'll be like, oh, that's that valley. And, these people, you're talking like 3 or 4 generations of people that just kind of, I don't, intermarried with each other. So, it is a very isolated and unique genetic community. And then that would help you in your paper research to confirm that you're in the right track. Because if your paper research has you on the other side of the state, womp womp, you're wrong. That's your DNA is in this other part of the state, so you should probably look there. Yeah.
And it can help you with those marriage licenses that you were talking about earlier
Yes, yeah.
too.
If they stayed there up to 1885, but yeah, we started moving around a lot, post Civil War. So,
Mm,
but yeah, some
that's
people didn't
true.
move though. But yeah,
So I'm just curious from a kind of behind the scenes perspective. And I I ask this because I struggle with it, and I mean, I'm a writer, but I struggle with focus. So I know that, you said you rewrote it like 5 times. So like, how did you manage to stay focused and get that book out right before the end of the year, which was your goal to have? It's like, because that was my goal last year too, is that I don't care if it's December 31st. And I think I told you that. And I think you had
Yeah.
the same mindset and you did it and I didn't. So
Yeah, but I didn't
kudos
do
to
those other
you.
things. I didn't publish any family history or anything. So, um, how did I do it? Well, so I had a writing group that I was a part of, and it was on Zoom, and we met once a week on Wednesdays, and we'd write together for part of the time. But the other deal was is that you talked about what you were going to work on for the next week. And I would show up to there every week, and some weeks, and I didn't want to be the person that didn't work on the thing that I said I was going to work on, right? So I would Tuesday afternoon finish the
I
thing
know
that
where
I
this is
said I was going
going.
to work on. Oh yeah, I am a good procrastinator. And scramble something together, but no, seeing the book through to completion, I didn't. So let me just say too, I didn't understand why people wrote books. Like I understood it, but I'm like, what possesses people to actually write books? Like I don't get it at all. Like how does this work? And then I published it, and people were like, "Thank you for writing this." Like I this I like this. This helps, and I was like, oh, like I took the stuff out of my head and the stuff that's on my computer and I put it out there for other people. And they were like, thank you. This is helpful. I'm like, oh, I could do that again. I know that sounds dumb, but I didn't do it because I was like, I'm an author and I'm a writer. And I just don't think like that. And it's
But
like,
you are an
oh, I could make
author.
it easier for people to find their ancestors in Pennsylvania because we are an awful, awful state to research. We're wonderful too. If you come here, you'll love us, I promise. But we just have stuff squirreled away everywhere, and I'm so sorry. But buy the book, I'll help you make it make sense. But it is yeah, no, it I want to do it again for our courthouses because these are wonderful institutions. They're beautiful buildings. The people that work in them are fantabulous. And it is fantastic and fabulous altogether, fantabulous. And I want people to come here and dig through our stuff and tell our stories.
So the accountability group was kind of like a good uh, kick in the butt, so to speak, to keep you on track, even though it was like every Tuesday afternoon. But I get it. I'd probably do the same thing.
Yeah. No, I think having a group of people that are looking at that are waiting on to hear from you, right, is helpful. Because at least for me, because left to my own devices, I will drift, and just keep kind of going along, and how much self-doubt does one person need to have? For me, like, like I've doubted about doing this and questioned myself and whatever. And it's like finally it's just like I gotta get the book done. And I published it and whatever, and I do a research trip out to Allegheny County, which is Pittsburgh, and I was like, oh, I missed a couple boroughs and that had vital records early. So let's make a list of those. I can add, so it's and if you want to know the counties, just go for anyone listening, just go to the County of Allegheny's website, and they have a link there to the boroughs that I missed that they that are now part of Pittsburgh but weren't, but did report their vital records earlier than 1893. So I
Okay.
missed a couple. I missed 3. I'm sorry. But I
Hey,
will I
3 out
will
of
fix
how
that. I will do
many?
a
I
version 2.
mean,
Yeah.
all right, you kind of mentioned it, so I want to hear a little bit more about the court records book that you're now working on or starting to work on.
Yeah, so I think so a lot of things that people are interested in Pennsylvania involve early Pennsylvanians, right? People like it's always that 1850 cutoff of people off the census that gets us every single time. And so a lot of people are looking for their first German ancestors or their first Scots-Irish that were here. That's the most common ethnicities that we had prior to 1850 in the state. And county courthouses is going to be where you're going to want to go for those records. So I want to explain to people what we have at the county courthouse and do it by department or by office, so this is what this office has, and this is the kind of records that they created. And again, here's what's online. And if you can't find it online, here's where it is at the county courthouse. So I have a members site. My members have gotten version 1 of this content delivered to them, and they have all this information. And I want to put it in book form because the book is a little more affordable for people than doing the online course. And for some people, they just like a book on their shelf, and some people like both. So I'm flexible. And I think the book has a longer shelf life than video. I mean, I don't know, maybe video is going to be around forever.
Well, people
but
learn differently too.
and people learn differently. You can make your own notes in the book a little bit easier and stuff. So county courthouses in Pennsylvania have our deeds are all at the county level. Our wills and estate records are all at the county level. I'm laughing because we have this word in Pennsylvania, prothonotary.
Yeah,
which is the clerk. Is the clerk of courts. That's at the county level. The prothonotaries taking in mostly civil matters. They also did some criminal filings at some points. So there's a lot of paperwork that comes through the prothonotary's office. So you're one of, if you're researching a lot, deeply into Pennsylvania, you're really stuck, you're going to want to check out that prothonotary's office. They got a lot of stuff. They have the infamous index of lunatics and drunkards that was produced in every county, 2 terms that we don't use now to describe people. And then the other, things we have, of course, tax collection going on. We have, some militia things that, are at the county level, but that's also at the state level. So I do need to do something about state records and what's at the state, what the state, I guess, kept on people. Now, there's always this, like, there's where the record was created, and then there's like where it lives today, which is always kind of confusing too. So we haven't, as a state, centralized our records at the state archives. New Jersey has done that, has taken county records and moved them to the state archives. Maryland has done it. Delaware, or as we call them in Pennsylvania, the lower counties, because Delaware used to be a part of Pennsylvania when it first colonized. Their stuff's all at the state archives, but Pennsylvania, our county records, far and large, are spread across in the counties. So there are some county records at the state archives just to keep you confused and on your toes, but not intentionally. It's sort of like they just ended up there. Sorry, Pennsylvania State Archives, if that changes. Because we do have a new Pennsylvania State Archives building being built as we're recording this, and they should be moving in this year. So perhaps in the expanded space, maybe they'll start centralizing some of those things, but I haven't heard any plans for that. But there might be some things that your ancestors that you might find at the state level, especially for those early people, because some of the biggest disputes were settled by state courts, because that's just what they did, prior to 1850 time period.
Yep.
So, but yeah, it's a little, there's that song in Groundhog's Day, the movie, called the Pennsylvania Polka. And I feel like that could be like my theme song. It's like, we're just like dancing around here. It's like, well, dance this way, dance that way. But, if you have a firm, as you research, you develop a firmer understanding of your ancestor, even if you don't succeed in finding something on the first try. That what we call negative search, or is also helpful. But hopefully with the more books I can produce and, to help you as listeners understand how our records are structured when they were made, then that would help you would get positive search results and new sources to look, because so much of our stuff is not online, I think, is the bottom line.
Hmm. So note to self, don't find any Pennsylvania ancestors. Got it.
We like to keep them a secret, apparently, here,
Yeah,
Yeah.
apparently.
Yeah.
Especially with those vital record laws on the deaths and births. My goodness. Like some of those dates were just outrageously, I couldn't believe it. I'm like, what was it, like 120 years for births or something like that?
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, okay. That's okay.
Yeah. So I did just request. My grandmother was born in 1920, and that's not 105 years, I think, is the wait period before those records become public for birth records.
Oh, okay.
So somebody can't fake somebody's identity. But so technically I could wait 3 more years and I could get access to that record as a public record. But I went ahead and did a request to the Pennsylvania Department of Health, who has those records right now, and to see if they could send me her, because she's deceased. So they will send you the birth certificate of someone who's deceased.
Oh, okay.
Before that, if you are a relative, you have to be
Gotcha.
related to them. So I qualified.
Cool.
But it costs a fee, right? So it's $20 for those, which is not inexpensive to have them look that up, whereas the public records are digitized on Ancestry. They're not indexed up to the current year that's available. But you could get them from the Pennsylvania State Archives for $5, which is a much more affordable,
Yeah.
especially if you want to do all the siblings or something,
Right.
to really confirm parents.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap up. Is there anything that you'd like to leave us with today?
Yeah, well, buy the book. So no, but now that I'm a published author, my
Yes, you
kids my
are.
my kids tease me endlessly about this. But I do want to say a word to anyone listening who's a genealogist, a family historian, no matter what you call yourself, a researcher. If you have knowledge in your head that you want to preserve, please, for the love of all that is out of the divine, whatever you call God, publish it in a paper format, okay? Because the internet is not forever. We've seen stuff disappear and go away and, get taken down, and companies get bought and whatever. Things just disappear. Publish it on paper. I don't care what it looks like. I don't care how it's cited. I don't care the font you use. Just put it on paper and make it available for other people to access. Don't put it on paper on a PDF and drop it off at your, local genealogical society. Like, upload it to Amazon. It's totally free. You can publish anything on Amazon.
You can
Charge
publish anything
$1
on
for it.
Internet Archive.
Yeah,
You
put
can
it on
publish it on
Internet
Internet
Archive.
Archive.
That's a digital version, but let other people download a paper version, a published version of your book. You can make a cover for your book. Amazon KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing, gives you the means to make a cover. It's very easy. Just go ahead and publish it. Publish a history of your county. Publish a history of your family. Publish a history of how to research in your county, all the records, all the unusual, weird events, the train crashes, the strikes, the riots, the murders, the whatever. I met a guy one time in an archive who was researching everyone that was hung for murder, executed for getting murder, committing a murder in that county. That's interesting. And publish it in a book. I don't care if 10 people buy it. The point is that's the stuff that we as genealogists 50 years from now want to find on our people, because someone can take that and then carry the work forward. If we don't publish it and make it whole and complete for people, something, then there's nothing to carry forward. They have to start at square one. Like, don't be that, don't be selfish and make them start at square one. Give them something to run with. I know there's people that are going to pick up this book and be like, she didn't do. That's fine. Criticize me. Please leave a review on Amazon with the criticism and I will fix it and adjust it. I have no ego about this at all. But I published it and you didn't. No, I'm sorry. But I published something and like you can publish it too. And I'm not going to criticize your publishing. I will send you an email and say, hey, you can add this to it, you know? And I think we can all encourage each other to publish. I think in genealogy, we get too caught up in, is this citation the right format? You know, blah, 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 blah. I mean, the arguments about citations need to stop. Just
Yeah.
just put it in a way that I understand how to find it. I don't care what order you do it in. Yeah. And so, yeah, that would be my thing. Just publish, publish, publish. And if you want encouragement, you can find me on my website. It's Denise Allen and it's PAancestors.com. That's PA for Pennsylvania, ancestors.com. And yeah, I have a newsletter. I send it out every Friday. And eventually I'll have a podcast up and running again and I'll have Julie back on.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Again, the book is Pennsylvania Vital Records Research. It's pretty purple. I had a highlighter to match it. It was pretty cool. I didn't have a purple pen though with me, so
Oh,
it was pencil notes. But anyways, thank you for coming on and talking about your book and your experience writing it and all that fun behind the scenes stuff. And we will say goodbye.
all right. Thank you, Julie. Thanks so much for having me on.